Welcome, everybody. Yeah, my name's Steve Good, and thank you for joining me on Pool Deck, the podcast that talks all things in and around the aquatic recreation industry. Today's topic is a real game changer in our industry. It's the buzzword that's circulating the internet, the news at the moment, and that's AI, artificial intelligence. AI is sort of really moving in leaps and bounds at the moment. It's in the news. Google's released Google Gemini. Samsung phones are putting it onto their sort of Galaxy phones. So AI is certainly, it's been around for a little while, but it's really moving forward and really changing the way we do things. Now, our guest is Daniel Mulvey. Now, he's the general manager for Lynxight, which is a drowning prevention system used in swimming pools to assist in supervision. Thank you for joining me on Pool Deck, Dan.
Thanks, Steve. It's great to be here.
Now, we met up at the conference, drowning conference here in Perth, late last year, and we also met up earlier this year. And I had a privilege of going around, and Dan took us on a bit of a tour on one of their facilities in Melbourne that sort of introduced the AI and Lynxight into the pool system to help sort of lifeguards. And I think that's one thing that's really going to change our industry. But before we sort of get into the actual program itself, or the actual AI and the technology, we're just going to get a little bit of history about you, Dan. Can you give us a bit of a background of where you've come from, what are you sort of doing now, and maybe some hobbies or interests that you've got?
Yeah, sure. No, look, I suppose my background is really from an operational standpoint. So I was lucky enough to be able to start my own leisure management business at the age of 19. And had a couple of business partners, and we grew those businesses quite significantly over the past. I feel very old when I say this, but the past 22 years. I really do come from the I've got chlorine in my blood, as a lot of people say. I was a swimmer when I was younger. Still enjoy swimming now. Probably not as much, but definitely. Still within the sport, so it's good. But
Yep.
as you mentioned, AI technology is coming leaps and bounds, and from my background, it certainly is a game changer. We've employed thousands of staff over the years, and we've now got technology that's available that can support these teams. So it's fantastic.
Sure. And what sort of, if you weren't doing this and you weren't on the podcast today, what would you prefer to be doing? What's your hobbies and interests?
Look, I've taken a bit of a liking to golf, to be honest. I think the years of playing footy and the body getting a bit older and a bit sorer, I think I'll leave that to the young guys. I think that's probably where. Look, I wouldn't probably say I'd rather be there. Right now, I'm sitting at a leisure centre, and as I said, I've been born and bred in aquatic facilities, so it's quite nice to actually be sitting here.
Oh, that's. I think we've all got as we get older, everyone sort of partially goes towards the golf. I think it's if you're not doing it all the time, you're always at the beck and peril of that little white ball, chasing it around, and
Definitely.
often not on the fairways, more in the bushes than on the fairways. But
I certainly see a lot of trees, mate. Let's just say that. Yeah,
that's great, and that's so. We mentioned Lynxight, so you're the general manager there at Lynxight. So can you give us, our listeners, a little bit of insight about what it is and what's its purpose?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Lynxight is it falls into the trap of the buzzword of 2024 now. Like I used to say 2023, but it is a buzzword, and I think it's really defining what AI means. But essentially for us at Lynxight, it's a drowning prevention system. So it's a camera-based system that uses a very sophisticated algorithm to identify human behavior that's what we call atypical. It's not normal. It's people in distress, and what the system is doing is looking for, those trends and those behaviors to send signals and alerts to basically a lifeguard tool that the lifeguards wear on their wrist. That and if you think about where AI fits now, if you think about any camera that you see in the streets, in shopping centers, you could pretty much guarantee that they have some sort of AI or machine learning or some algorithm in there that's operating. We've never really had it in that sense in our industry before, and I think the biggest barrier to that has been the ability to collect data. And when we talk about data in this space, it's, we've got to look at people in their swimmers. We've got to look at, people, in an aquatic environment. So it is, it's always been very difficult to sort of break those barriers. But, our system uses all unidentified data. So there's no recognition of the individual. And we've been able to build the algorithm to look at their behavior. So.
Yeah, so that's really sort of changed a bit to obviously what we've always seen in the movies with these scientific things by facial recognition and satellites beaming down and being able to sort of point out people and, find out where they are and that. So this is more about sort of recognizing, sort of individuals, as you mentioned, sort of in distress and looking for those sorts of data points rather than, sort of facial recognition in that sort of privacy sort of area, aren't we?
Yeah, 100%. There's no way through the system that you can determine someone's facial features and things like that. We've had a new release, which was, we might talk about a bit later, but it now recognizes body parts. So it's able to recognize arms and head and differentiate that. But other than that, there's no way to recognize somebody's, key features, I suppose.
Yeah, so this is certainly not, I suppose the technology has advanced, but it's certainly not new to our industry. We've had companies come through, Poseidon, with other sort of similar things, and they're an underwater camera recognition. There's a few others out there, but there's not just down to cameras, is there? Is this technology around sort of helping the lifeguard or helping recognise a drowning person through wristbands or even in the home environment with the detection of waves if something fell into the pool. It's all sort of building around that, isn't it? There's that using an assistance in technology to help us sort of keep those areas safe.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There are other systems that do similar, do a similar service, and I guess where the differentiator for Lynxight is that it's now looking at human behavior. So it's not waiting for someone to be submerged before alerts are triggered. It's all about prevention. And with a lot of the data, Lynxight operates globally, so it's not just isolated to Australia. So, drowning in its 6 stages is universal. So, we're now able to recognize early stages of drowning and what that's starting to look like from a behavior point of view. And that's really significant. That's a really significant leap, I suppose, in the technology. That's where these things are heading.
Yeah. Now, we've got a lot of regional facilities here in Western Australia. Now, predominantly what they've done down thing, if they're trying to be proactive in helping a single operator, a lot of the facilities were putting in CCTV, and that's that closed circuit TV. Give us a bit of a description about the differences between what sort of Lynxight and the CCTV sort of systems are, and how do they differentiate?
Yeah, sure. So the beauty with Lynxight is it is just using existing or it's using a standard CCTV stream, which brings that back to basically a server. Now built within that server is all the brains of the system. So the algorithms, it's where all the computing happens, the smarts basically. So the beauty is we can tap into a standard live stream. And bring that back to the server, and then it analyzes the data, and then it sends alerts to lifeguards via a smartwatch, which tells them where the person is that's in distress, how long they've been in distress. They're able to, we take a snapshot of that person. So the lifeguards know exactly where to go, what they're looking for, and how long the incident's been taking place. So, the difference between, the Lynxight system and a standard CCTV is essentially the brain. So, there's the cameras themselves there's nothing special. Off the shelf standard camera. It's really the algorithm and the brain of the system where it's doing the processing.
Yeah, because the CCTV, it's pretty much just giving you a visual, and that's it, isn't it? So
that's right.
You'd have to sort of be manning that all the time, watching that all the time, like you sort of see in the movies with the shopping mall sort of guards sitting in front of their TV, just constantly watching if anything's going on, which is not really productive about a single operator. They're not actually out there on pool deck, and if they do miss something on the TV, then it's not going to alert them.
Exactly right. And, the challenges of a single operator, manning the kiosk and reception and customer service and lifeguards and plant room, it's real. So, that they are real challenges. And, these systems and particularly Lynxight is, it's built specifically as a layer of protection. It's just another set of eyes. If you think about it like that, another set of eyes that is analyzing everybody that's in the water. Something that a human can't do in real time. So this is the beauty of technology, and we embrace it every day using phones and computers. Now we're just blessed to be able to have this in the aquatic industry.
So that sort of leads us into our next sort of topic of conversation now. You hear it a lot. Robots is coming to take over the world. They're going to control us. And if we put these in place, we're not going to have any lifeguards left. That's sort of a bit of a myth that, hopefully you can debunk today. And that sort of give us the reason why. Why is it not going to replace lifeguards?
Yeah, look, lifeguards are more... they're there for more than jumping in and saving lives. They're there for customer service. They're there for, they're looking after behavior around, crowd control and things like that. Lifeguards are all it's a preventative tool. So if you think about that, lifeguards are there to prevent incidents from taking place. So, I mean, the amount of training that we go through and we give our staff in terms of recognizing and incidents before they take place. Cameras can't jump in if there is an incident. They can't jump in. They can't pull people out. Yeah. They can't do CPR.
Not yet, anyway.
Well, not yet, but I think that's beyond our lifetime. Yeah. But
yes.
So the need for lifeguards is absolutely paramount, and all of these systems are not there to replace lifeguards. What it can do, and I think, this is not just a safety tool, this is also an analytics tool. And what it's going to do is going to be able to assist operators and even single operators to understand their peaks and troughs in real time and real data, and be more efficient with the deployment of lifeguards.
And certainly with the aid of wearing a watch, most all these watches have got GPS tracking, all those sorts of things as well. So that's something we could be sort of looking into. Obviously, the patterns of where the lifeguard is supervising and how many rotations, how long they're standing still, those sorts of things. Is that something that could be sort of implemented into that software program?
Yeah, look, I'm not the algorithm team, but certainly I guess the technology is endless, right? So it's really about what is our priority right now, and our priority right now is the safety alerts. And because we're not tracking individuals, we have all unidentified data. We're unable to determine who's the lifeguard, who's a patron, etc. So I think we start. When we move into that space, we start to move into more data protection and privacy issues. But I think that makes sense. And it's not a Big Brother is watching kind of scenario. It's really about how do we more effectively position lifeguards to support, to make the facilities more safe.
Yeah. Now you mentioned obviously the data collection that we're sort of looking at. So give us a sort of an example of the types of data it's collecting, things like head counts, or how does it deal with things like objects in the way, line of sight, glare issues, those drowning patterns that you sort of mentioned, and that gives a bit of an insight about the data that it's sort of learning from.
Yeah, look, I suppose what it's collecting and what it's learning from is similar, but what it's displaying for customers. So we live swimmer head counts at all times. So each pool has a swimmer head count that's displayed on the watch at all times. So the thought of 15-minute head counts goes out the window. That's no longer necessary. It's all automated and it's tracked and logged in a dashboard. But what the talk about glare and objects in the water. Interestingly, when Lynxight was deployed here in Australia, the system had never seen learn to swim platforms before, as an example.
Right.
So there was lots of alerts being triggered on that. Hey, someone is submerged or something is submerged underwater here. You need the lifeguards to go and check. Now, this is where the whole machine learning and AI power comes in. The system has now learnt what the difference between a body is and what a learn to swim platform, for example. So now we don't get alerts on learn to swim platforms. So if you think about if we've got a system on a learn to swim pool, it's now only tracking the safety of patrons. It's not looking for kickboards. It's not looking for learn to swim platforms or goggles on the bottom of the pool or things like that. So this is the intelligence that the AI has. It's always learning. And if we talk about data, you got to remember that this, like I said earlier, this is deployed internationally in about 8 countries. And so all of the data that we're collecting helps inform the system and makes it more intelligent. So the more systems we deploy over time, the smarter this thing will be, and the quicker alerts will come. The safer our patrons will be, basically.
Yeah. Now the biggest pet hate of a lifeguard is glare. How do we deal with glare? How does the camera sort of be able to see through the water, if it's got that glare from outside windows, natural lighting, those sorts of things?
Yeah, look, this comes down to the deployment plans that we put in place. So when we're putting a system in, we would go and do a survey on a site, and we would look at where the cameras are going to be placed, and we would make sure that if there's glare at one particular point in the day and it's blinding one camera, there's another camera that's picking up the slack essentially and looking at that space. So, how we train our lifeguards with their scanning patterns to overlay and crossover, we do the same thing with our cameras. So we're making sure that there's always an overlap and there's never any, dead spots, I suppose, in around the facility. The other, with glare, because we're mounting the cameras as high as possible, it does remove a lot of those issues.
Yeah, no, that's great use of that. And as you said, it may be possible to utilize cameras if they're appropriately placed. But as you said, the initial setup to get those cameras right will be certainly crucial. Now, I've been looking into this AI with Google Gemini, this multimodal effect of collecting data. Now, you obviously, with videos, you're collecting video, transporting that into some sort of data set. They're actually starting to use audio and speech and those sorts of things. Is that something that is mindful that you can use maybe the audio within the center as well in the future?
Yeah, look, I'll give you an example of audio and we all know this, and I'm not telling anyone how to suck eggs, but built into the watches is actually a walkie-talkie function. So, technically we could remove two-way radios from pool deck and just use the watches. But the noise inside, and I just walked out of a facility, it's very difficult. So, I think that again, where technology is heading, there's certainly going to be opportunities for improvement, and different, overlays of or features, I suppose. but the big thing is that human behavior doesn't change from a drowning perspective. It's the same no matter where you live in the world. It's the same. So it makes it a lot easier to sort of aggregate and teach the system.
Yeah. Now, the other big word is obviously with a lot of these big companies coming under fire is cybersecurity and sort of hackers and privacy. What sort of steps are sort of getting taken into that respect? Because obviously we're videoing people in the pool. We need to keep that sort of private within their companies. How are we sort of dealing with that?
Yeah, look, it's a hot topic, and from a Lynxight perspective, we follow the guidelines and the rules implemented across the world, and we get audited on an ongoing basis about our data collection and the privacy, and it's specific to every region. So, for example, in Germany, it's one of the world's most stringent cybersecurity, or the GDPR is most stringent policy in the world, and we're deploying in Germany. So we're compliant with different regions, and it's specific to those regions. So in Australia, a lot of actually all of our customers have on-site servers. So the data that's being collected is actually theirs. It doesn't go off-site. It stays on-site and it's managed there. It is housed in AWS servers, again, all here in Australia. So, it's a little bit beyond me in terms of knowing exactly the stringent rules, but because we're audited all the time, the data is very secure.
Yeah. Now, I want to go back to the lifeguarding, and you sort of mentioned that, it is going to change. Certainly, in the way we're actually training new lifeguards into the system. You mentioned it could replace walkie-talkies. Hand signals might sort of diminish or go away. But certainly, I think a collection of all sorts of communications. Obviously, if you've got a watch on, you might be changing a lane rope and it's under the water. You might not get that alert, straight away. So there's sort of other things, but certainly the way we're teaching or retraining or requalifying lifeguards with the use of AI is certainly going to change, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the best way that I think about this when I get these types of questions is, 20 plus years ago, when I did my lifeguard course, we were taught hand signals. So we were taught, spinal rescue and your major emergency, etc. And then exactly, like spinal. And then we moved to whistles, right? So then we implemented whistles within the workflows. So now we've got hand signals and whistles. And then we moved to two-way radios. So now we've got 3 tools that a lifeguard has: hand signals, two-way radio, and a whistle. This is just, in my mind, this is just the next evolution, right? So now lifeguards have a watch. So they've got 4 tools that they're using. So from a training perspective, there's definitely going to be changes in the way lifeguards operate. A great analogy I think about is, X amount of years ago, planes didn't have autopilot. It was just a pilot in a cockpit flying the plane. Now, you wouldn't even think about getting on a plane without autopilot, right? So technology is advancing the way that we, as customers or consumers, interact with products and services, but it's also advancing the way that we that we service our customers as well. So that's probably the best way that I think about it. It's just a tool, another tool.
And adding another layer, because obviously if one of those other layers, even the AI layer, if that falls over, you still can get reverted back to, and they're aware of how to sort of, arrange an emergency or respond to that emergency without the use of AI. And that,
absolutely. Yeah, great point, Steve. And I think it's really important to note that, we are working with technology. So it's, we have limitations here in Australia with our internet is a great example. So there are times that the system isn't live. We might have the internet might go out, the servers might go out. So the thing is, the world doesn't end because it's not in service. So, we revert back to what we know, and that's using, instead of 4 tools, we now got 3 tools.
Yeah. Perfect example. A lot of our regional areas, they've had bushfires, and a lot of their facilities were powers were cut, and they were still operating for a few hours until they sort of couldn't. But yeah, they wouldn't have had that sort of AI during those sort of power failures, and so forth. So it's really important to know there's just another layer, and to make sure that we've got all those other areas still within our training packages. Now, this sort of leads me into, still with the lifeguard and receiving those alerts. How many alerts are too many? Sort of that boy who cried wolf scenario. If you've got your watch pinging off 20, 30, 40 times a day, you're going to get pretty blasé about it, aren't you?
Yeah, well, in actual fact, if I was a lifeguard and that was annoying, I'd just take the watch off, right? Yeah. Exactly. And there is an inherent problem, because you take the watch off, something happens, it's not good. So, it's a good question. And, I guess there is an ISO standard, or there's an international standard for this type of technology, and it sits at around 5 alerts per pool per day. Now, what we're seeing in our trends is that some pools are a little bit over that, but they're facilities that have 1.5 million visitations a year, very, very busy. So you would expect that there would be a few more, I guess, on average alerts. But typically we're sitting anywhere between 1 to 3 alerts per pool per day. So if you think about, a pool with 5, a facility with 5 pools, getting 3 alerts per day, and it's open for 15 hours, it's 1 alert an hour. So it's not, that's if my maths is correct, but it's not going off all the time. And the beauty is it's learning. So, it's getting more efficient in those types of alerts. We're even getting feedback from lifeguards right now that say, right at the start, they weren't real confident that the system would alert on proper incidents. And now we're getting feedback saying, we are so happy that this is installed because we miss these types of things. So, it's certainly not becoming a pain.
Yeah, and certainly that's what we're looking on at the National Aquatic Industry Committee as well. Is that how many patrons can a lifeguard actually physically, sort of supervise? So this AI will come into the conversation, into that as well. 1 to 100 it's always been. I think that figure was just plucked out of nowhere, and just a guesstimate. New studies have come out that saying, well, maybe 75 or even 50 is more a realistic sort of term. But certainly with AI, if we've got that, then it's, things may change. So it's certainly been a really interesting topic about today. And that's so what we think. If you want to just give our listeners a bit of a heads up of if somebody was interested in Linux and site and how to get in contact with you and those sorts of things. So are you on social media? What sort of platforms are you on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can contact me on my LinkedIn page, and I look at that all the time. Email is the easiest one, and
I'll put those links up.
Yeah, that's the best way to get in contact with me. My phone is on 24/7, unfortunately for me. But if you send me an email, I'll certainly get back to you. Within 24 hours.
Yeah, that's great. I really appreciate your time. It's certainly an interesting topic. I'm sure that this won't be the last we will hear of AI. It will be certainly in our conversations for the next few years as it develops and how we integrate this into our new working patterns. So I really appreciate your time today, Dan, and we'll sign off for this week. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening to us on Pool Deck, and we will see you in our next episode.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Dan.